Hello and welcome to this episode of Mad Lads of World War II. In this episode we will be looking at the story of Lachimann Gurung of the 8th Gurkha Rifles. Now, for those of you who have never heard of the Gurkhas, they are like a kind of an auxiliary unit of the British Army, and they are absolutely fucking insane. Insanely strong, the politest people, but just absolutely crazy strong. But anyway, on the night of 12th of May 1945, Lachimann Gurung of the 8th Gurkha Rifles was part of a small forward platoon dug into trenches defending a position in Burma, when all of a sudden his tiny unit came under a massive attack from a couple hundred Japanese soldiers looking to punch through these defences and then punch a few holes into his torso so that they could tear out his large intestines and strangle him to death with them. The idea of this was not very appealing to Lachimann. The marching Japanese first decided to soften up the Gurkha positions by chucking 3 full dickloads of hand grenades and various explosive materials into the Allied trenches, and then face shooting the bejesus out of anyone who tried to dive out of the trench or otherwise escape their imminent fragmentation-related demises. Gurung summarily developed an ingenious third option, one which didn't blow him up and result in exposing himself to an enfilade of enemy fire. He just snatched the fucking live grenades up the floor of the trench and chucked them back at the Japanese. His tactic of hurling insults and incendiaries at the enemy whenever the opportunity presented itself worked out well for a while, and he sent 2 flying explosive middle fingers back to his assailants. But the third time proved not to be the charm for Lachimann. His timing was a little off and the grenade ended up detonating in his hand. In the military, this is what they refer to as bad. The frag flew off a couple of fingers, destroyed his right arm, and nearly took off half his face. He was bleeding, partially blinded, crippled, and seriously effed up in general, but despite having half of his body blown into something vaguely like nothing like you've ever seen, I'd imagine, Lachimann Gurung was sure as hell not going to stop resisting the onslaught as long as he was capable of sustaining basic life functions. Half dead, bloody, and badly wounded, Gurung drew his kukri knife, the ultimate symbol of Gurkha badass attitude. He jammed it point first into the ground before him and defiantly yelled into the darkness, "No one will pass here today." Then he grabbed his rifle, chambered around, and shouted, "Now come and fight a Gurkha." With every other man lying dead around him, Lachimann Gurung never stopped shooting every Japanese person he could see. This dude by himself loaded, cocked, and fired his bolt-action rifle for 4 hours of non-stop combat, fighting off wave after wave of attackers like a wounded Wolverine, tearing his own leg off with bullets. His tactic for success was to lie down in the trench and not get shot, wait until he could hear the enemy soldiers nearly right on top of him, and then pop round and shift it back and blast another guy apart. How the hell he managed to hold off 200 gun-toting, battle-hardened Japanese soldiers using this technique is completely beyond me. But the authors of the Victoria Cross citations aren't usually in the habit of making shit up off the top of their heads. By the time the smoke cleared the next morning, Gurung had been fighting for over 4 hours straight. 31 Japanese soldiers lay dead in the field before him. He'd single-handedly kicked all of their ass, and I of course mean single-handedly in every possible meaning of the word. Gurung had to be hospitalised, mostly for extreme blood hysteria and obscenely high levels of testosterone, but also because his arm had been blown off and a grenade and explosive shrapnel had blinded him in his right eye. He never regained the use of his right arm, but this guy ripped so many balls with his offhand, and they let him stay in the service and finish up the war with his unit. He refused to be sent home anyway, and if there's one thing about Lachimann Gurung, is that you can't make this guy move anywhere he doesn't want to go. So his superiors were just like, "Forget it, man, whatever you want, stay with us." But after the war, Gurung moved back home to Nepal for a while and then eventually immigrated to Britain. Even into his significantly more decrepit years, this guy continued staying true to his people and never forgot his roots. And unfortunately in 2008, when Gurkha soldiers were told they weren't allowed to live in Britain because they had failed to demonstrate strong ties to Britain, the 91-year-old Gurung hauled arse out to the High Court. They decided out in about 1 million medals and told the judicial system to take their bullshit law, crumple it up the paper it was printed on, and jam it up their own urethras. Everyone was so impressed that they ended up repealing the stupid law, which is the best thing to do. But yeah, this guy was a legend. But anyway, that concludes this episode of Mad Lads of World War II. Thank you for watching. We featured Lachimann Gurung of the Gurkha Rifles in this episode. And remember to hit the subscribe button for more great and informative historical content. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.